Hello and welcome to Dateline. I'm Yana Vent. This week, Fatah leader Marwan Barghouti on the united Palestinian solution to the conflict with Israel. Also tonight, the sex scandal threatening Egypt's Coptic church.
Now the monastery is at the centre of a controversy that is threatening Egypt's religious unity. A former monk, Abdel Sabdallah Gabriel, is accused of desecrating this holiest of places by having a string of sexual affairs with married women.
Well, I think that incident is a very, very, very ugly incident. One of the worst we ever had in Egypt, maybe throughout its history.
And outspoken philosopher Peter Singer talks about the morality of euthanasia.
Either you ought to really try and save every life you can, or you ought to be prepared to say, I think it's better that this baby should not live, and I will make sure that this baby does die quickly and humanely.
Those stories later. But first, in a bid to create a united front against Israel, Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat is moving to overcome differences with his political rivals. Mr. Arafat has agreed to establish a national dialogue with radical groups Hamas and Islamic Jihad. The move comes after Israel vowed to continue killing Palestinian militants it deems to be security threats. Last weekend, a leader of Arafat's Fatah movement, Marwan Barghouti, narrowly escaped death when an Israeli missile was fired at his car. Mr. Barghouti immediately repeated his call for an all-party Palestinian national unity government to replace the Palestinian Authority. A short time ago, I spoke to Marwan Barghouti from Ramallah on the West Bank. Marwan Barghouti, thank you for joining Dateline. You're calling for the dismantling of the Palestinian Authority and the creation of a new government. Why?
Yeah, we need to create Palestinian new national government and to allow the other Palestinian political factions to be part of the decision maker, like Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Popular Front, and Democratic Front, and other people who are in the opposition during the last 10 years. And this is the best time to strengthen the Palestinian unity.
Okay, groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad are the groups that send suicide bombers into Israel. Now, what kind of message then do you want to send to Israel by including them in this new government?
Yeah, I think all the fascist groups in Israel or the extremists are sitting in the Israeli government. And like Rahban Zivi, who calling for the transfer and expel the Palestinian people from Palestine, like Lieberman and other groups. And I do believe that we have to work together on one political united program for the Palestinian people. All the Palestinian political factions are united now on one goal for the Intifada and the resistance, which to put an end for the Israeli occupation and for real peace with Israel.
Okay, well, would the aim of this new government be to fight a more effective war against Israel now, or to work towards peace?
Yeah, of course, we looking for a new government, first of all, to be united, and second, to lead the Palestinian struggle in political struggle and also the negotiations in the future, and of course to enhance and to encourage and to strengthen the Intifada and the resistance on the ground, because during 11 months we are facing an Israeli comprehensive war against our people.
So if I can just, just interrupt you, so the aim of this new government then would be to fight on a continuation of the Intifada and a rejection of the ceasefire called for by Chairman Arafat?
No, I don't think that there is any kind of ceasefire. Since the Israeli, they declared that in 22 of May till now, they killed more than 114 Palestinians, including leaders, political leaders who were assassinated. This is a terror policy from the Israeli government. And as you know, 1 week ago, 2 of the prominent political leaders were assassinated in Nablus here near Ramallah, And on Saturday, the Israelis are trying to kill and to assassinate a group of Fatah cadres and leaders. I was between these people. And I think they are going in their policy. There is no any kind of ceasefire on the ground.
Chairman Arafat clearly wants to see an implementation of the Mitchell report, which calls for a ceasefire and then confidence-building measures. Now, do you disagree with him when he calls for that?
No, I think we have to deal with all the international and regional efforts to put an end for the Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people.
No, but can I just ask you, are you prepared to undertake a ceasefire as Chairman Arafat would have you?
No, from the Palestinian side, we were committed for everything, and we welcome the Mitchell report and the Egyptian Jordanian initiative and the G8 call for observers in the Middle East, in Palestine, and between the Israelis and etc. There is no problem from the Palestinian side. The Israeli Prime Minister, who refused the G8 decision to send observers for the region, who refused Mitchell report, who refused all these initiatives in the Middle East to put an end for the bloodshed. And I think the source of the terror, of the violence in this region came from the Israeli occupation. If there is the occupation, the resistance, the intifada will continue.
Mr. Barghouti, can I just finish off on this subject? You're talking talk that is more radical than your leader, Chairman Arafat. Is this move to form a unity government a challenge to Mr. Arafat's leadership?
No, I think the unity government has to be chaired by Mr. Arafat, no question about that. He is the elected president for the Palestinian people. There is no differences about that. But what we are talking about, that the problem in the Middle East, the core of the conflict in the Middle East is the Israeli occupation.
Mr. Barghouti, you yourself narrowly escaped an Israeli attack the other day. Do you feel that you were the one who was being targeted in that attack?
Of course, absolutely. I think we were attacked near by here. We were in my office. I going down from my office. After 2-3 minutes, the Israeli shot 3 rockets to our cars, and one of our people were shot, and he was wounded. And I think this is a crime policy from the Israeli side. They have to stop it, because it's a terrorist state to continue to assassinate political leaders. I am an elected member of the Palestinian parliament. I am a political leader. They have to stop their aggression attacks against the Palestinian people.
Do you now fear for your life?
I think, of course, but I don't think this is an individual issue. What we are looking for, the protection for our people, because the Israelis kill during the last 11 months children, women, demolish houses, tightening the closure, arrest the people, suffering, etc., killing political leaders. So I think they are going in their policy. But by this policy, I can say it's very clear. They will not achieve security by force, by military force.
Mr. Barghouti, let me just quickly put to you something that your Palestinian news agency Wafa said a couple of days ago. It said, "We have to admit that no matter how many casualties we cause the Israelis, we will not be able to win the war against them. Only by political means shall we be able to achieve our goals." What do you say to that?
Yeah, of course, you know, we're trying during the last 10 years of negotiations, under the umbrella of the negotiations, the Israelis built a new colonialism settlements in the occupied territories, 23,400 housing units in the occupied territories.
But can I just get you to respond directly to that quote from the Palestinian news agency, that you will never be able to win the war against the Israelis the way you are going? What do you say to that?
We will win our independence. The Palestinian independent state is a condition for the peace in the Middle East. If they didn't recognize our right of self-determination, including established Palestinian state, never there will be security or peace or stability in the Middle East.
Marwan Barghouti, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Egypt's Christians and Muslims have managed to live in relative, if fragile, harmony for centuries. However, the publication of allegations regarding a sex scandal is now threatening that delicate peace. Coptic Christians have been demonstrating in the streets, demanding that the Egyptian government take action to end what they see as an Islamic campaign against them. Copts make up only 10% of Egypt's population, and Matthew Carney reports on the fears held by this ancient but threatened community.
This is a picture of religious harmony. 500,000 people have come from all over Egypt to the country's most venerated monastery, Al-Maharik. They're celebrating with a 10-day feast to honour the Virgin Mary. This monastery is revered as the place where the Holy Family came to seek refuge from Herod, the Roman governor who wanted baby Jesus killed. The family stayed 6 months at this site, and it's believed Jesus Christ consecrated the first Christian altar here. The Coptic Christians of Egypt considered this place a second Jerusalem.
طبعا بيبقوا من الفرحة واللي زي بيزور الأماكن المقدسة اللي جاء فيها السيد المسيح قاعد فيها
مشان بحس بالسعادة والأمان والمحبة لست العذراء ومخلص الباتع لأن معجزاتها بتخلينا نيجي هنا ونزورها ما توصلش في أي شيء.
Even Egypt's Muslims have joined the pilgrimage. In fact, a quarter of all visitors are Muslims. In the Quran, both Jesus and the Virgin Mary are sanctified.
التدين والاخاء بين المسيحيين والمسلمين يعني ده مشاعرنا موجوده طبعا لان ده مكان يعني مكان ديني ومكان مقدس.
For 3 hours every night, the monks of Al-Maharik chant their prayers in a ritual that's 1,000 years old. But now the monastery is at the centre of a controversy that is threatening Egypt's religious unity. A former monk, Abdel Sabdallah Gabriel, is accused of desecrating this holiest of places by having a string of sexual affairs with married women. And what has brought Egypt to the brink is the publication of the monk's deeds for all to see. By any tabloid standards, it was a big spread, splashed across 3 pages with headlines like "Monk turns monastery into whorehouse" and "Miracle Monk has sex with 5,000 women." The allegations struck at the core of Coptic Christianity, according to the church's spokesperson, Bishop Ioannis.
علشان هذه المرة المسيحيين يعني اتهموا ليس في أشخاصهم بل في كرامة مقدساتهم. زي ما أنا بقول دايما مثل في فرق بين إنك أنت تتهم شخص في شرفه وفرق بين إنك أنت تتهم الشخص في شرفه وفي شرف مقدساته. دي كانت صعبة جدا جدا.
That incident is a very, very, very ugly incident. One of the worst we ever had in Egypt, maybe throughout its history, and definitely during our lives.
The reaction against the publication of the articles was swift and unprecedented. 10,000 Copts came out onto the streets of Cairo to vent their rage. Describing their holiest of places as a whorehouse was too much, and protesters believed the government was responsible for their humiliation because it allowed the publication of the article in the first place.
فاهمه حضرتك الوضع اللي حصل دوت، وان فعلا البنات بتوعنا اخواتنا زوجاتنا امهاتنا لما بيمشوا في الشارع المصري عامه الناس بتتكلم عليهم، ممكن حد يغلط فيهم غلطه وصلت لدرجه اساءه يدفوا عليهم، ينزلوهم من المواصلات العامه، ينزلوا البنت من المواصلات العامه يقولوا لها يا زانيه، وصلت لحاجات كتير قوي.
The anger was explosive. The demonstrations went on for 3 days and left 70 injured. The police were barely able to contain the protesters. Cairo is still tense. The unrest has highlighted years of frustration and discrimination against the Copts by Egyptian Muslims. It also unleashed anger about the Kosh massacre of January last year, when the Muslim killers of 20 Copts received light sentences. For many, the Al-Nabar article, published at the behest of editor Mahmoud Marwan, was the last straw.
حدث في مهران لن يشفي هذا الأقباط، ولكن اللي يشفي الأقباط أنهم يأخذوا حقوقهم بالكامل. جميع الشباب اللي جاي ما هوش قضية مهران اللي جابته، ده جابته قضية الكشح، جابت له قضية الخنقة، قضية الزاوية، صنموا التحرشات اليومية المرتبطة بينا ومتعلقة علينا.
ما بتاخدش بكلام يا جدعان، سيب واحد يتكلم يا جدعان.
الذي ينهي الذي باختصار في عبارة واحدة، الذي يشفي الأقباط حاليا هو حقهم في المواطنة الكاملة.
The protesters demanded action, and the state, realising the threat to national unity was real, gave it to them. The paper has been closed down and the editor has been put on trial, charged with undermining public order, inciting hatred and publishing pornographic pictures. The church does not deny the former monk committed the acts, but says they occurred only after he was expelled from the Coptic Church in 1996 for financial and disciplinary matters. The editor did get the facts wrong, and the state is likely to give Mr. Marwan a lengthy jail sentence so that anger can be quelled and civil peace restored.
كل الناس اتحركت من قلبها ان فعلا يعني شجبت هذا الحدث جدا، ودي حاجة كويسة، دي حاجة احنا فرحانين ليها، ولكن برضو ارجع واقول القضاء لا يكفينا الكلام ولكن الفعل.
نجي يا مخلص شعب المتواضع، لا تتركنا للانقضاء ولا تسلمنا الى
The Copts have sought strength and solace from their patron Saint Mark, who was martyred for spreading the word of Jesus Christ to Egypt in the 1st century. This latest incident has inflamed tensions between the Copts, who number about 6 million, or 10% of the population, and the Muslim majority of 55 million. But the Copt story is not the usual tale of a persecuted minority. With the coming of Islam in the 7th century, many Copts converted, and the two religions coexisted for centuries, together fighting off the Crusaders from Europe and freeing their country from their British colonial masters. It's only in recent years that the Coptic community has felt marginalised, according to prominent Coptic intellectual Malad Hanna.
The Copts as a minority, they are a unique minority because their grassroots are here in Egypt. Therefore, they are proud of being Egyptian. Their discrepancies are very minimal. And they are one of the luckiest communities as minorities. Nevertheless, there are some type of discrimination, for example, in jobs, in senior posts in the government.
The Copts have suffered violence, not from the government, but at the hand of Islamic fundamentalists. The Christians see the release of the pornographic material as part of an ongoing Islamic campaign to humiliate them. The Copts are at one with the government, which has curbed fundamentalist activities and placed many fundamentalist leaders in jail.
Their target is to topple the whole regime, and therefore they tried in many ways, by attacking tourists, by attacking the police, by attacking the president himself, by attacking some ministers, by killing 3 or 4 of our thinkers, and of course the religious subject being a sensitive one, they knew that if they penetrate through that, they will create commotion, and they did.
But the underlying cause of the demonstrations is economic hardship. As a community, the Copts have lost power and wealth. In 1960, before President Nasser's Arab Socialist Revolution, they made up 20% of the population and controlled half of Egypt's wealth. Today, much of the community is economically and politically deprived. Rasmissa's Ga'ad's story is typical. She lives in the outer suburbs of Cairo in this 3-room house with her 5 children and sick husband. She struggles to survive on $50 a month. Rasmissa wants the best for her children, but it's unlikely they'll be able to break out of the poverty into which they've been born.
أولادي مرتاحين وكويسين والعيال يبقوا كويسين معي 2 متعلمين في المدرسة ما يتعلموا في المدرسة عايزهم يبقوا حلوين وناجحين.
And the Copts have no vehicle to criticise the government. President Mubarak does not tolerate dissenting views, so the church becomes the only means to vent their frustrations.
They are an expression of the anger which is boiling in the hearts of many people, especially the young, due to unemployment, to the problem of housing, to the fact that they feel they don't have a chance because there aren't enough projects to keep them busy and for production. Prices are getting higher, the burden of taxation.
Now, there is nobody with any significance in Egypt who is a Copt. Even the ministers, they are second-class ministers. They are irrelevant. You don't go to them, and if you go to them, they will tell you Egypt is a wonderful state and it's excellent. They never are able to make any critic to the government, otherwise they will be depressed.
But it's about time the Egyptian government started to listen. Observers fear if there is no real political and economic change, further unrest is inevitable.
If the parameters of the problem are the same, if the community conditions are the same, the economic conditions are the same, the political system is the same, and it's producing frustration with the Coptic community, the frustration will get repeated. Therefore, I've said this very present situation has produced frustration. And I'm sure within less than 6 months, you'll be coming to me again with one further instance.
The church sees it differently. It feels the demonstration sent a powerful enough message for the government to take the necessary steps to ensure the Copts are not humiliated like this again.
And I don't think that this last event will be repeated. I don't think. I think that the government took a very good lesson. And they didn't expect this reaction, this Coptic reaction, until the end. They didn't expect it.
Matthew Carney with that report. For 25 years, Australian philosopher Peter Singer has been driving a stake through conventional thinking. He first made us sit up when he argued his now famous case for the rights of animals. Since then, he's weighed in on many subjects, including the biggest one of all, how we should live and what constitutes an ethical life. Most controversially, he's written about death and the right of humans to die when they choose. And it is that view which caused a maelstrom of protest when Professor Singer took up his appointment at Princeton University in the US 2 years ago. I spoke with Peter Singer from New York on the eve of a visit to Australia. Peter Singer, welcome to Dateline. Your work attracts both devoted followers and enraged opponents. Is this just a natural part, do you think, of a philosopher's work?
It's certainly not a natural part of every philosopher's work. If I were working in logic or metaphysics, I'm sure that the public would never have heard of me and I wouldn't get a peep out of them. But I think if you're working on issues in practical or applied ethics, if you're working on issues like euthanasia or what we do to animals, those issues tend to, I guess, evoke a fair amount of emotional response, whatever you say.
You're saying working on those issues. In your case, does that mean challenging the prevailing ethic on them?
Well, the conclusions that I've come up with certainly do challenge the prevailing ethic. I think there is something about